She was a diplomat for 15 years. She knew the rules. Convoys don't stop. Then she looked out her window. A side street, a delivery truck, and a Korean woman on the ground, being kicked in the ribs while a man held her by the hair. Every vehicle in that convoy kept moving. She put her hand on the door handle. Her team said, "Ma'am, we cannot stop." She said, "Stop the convoy." She got out. She went to that woman. She filed a report. She leaked the footage. She thought she was saving a stranger. She had no idea who that woman was. She had no idea whose blood she carried. She had no idea that somewhere in Seoul, the coldest man alive was about to see that footage. And the war she just started? She didn't even know her name yet. If you enjoy stories like this, stay glued because things are about to get heated. Consider liking this video and subscribing if you enjoy this video. Without further ado, let's get started. Her name was Amara Osei, Senior Diplomat, Republic of Adara. 15 years without a single mark on her record. She had worked in 6 countries. She had negotiated in rooms that smelled like cigarettes and old money. She had sat across from men who were used to getting exactly what they wanted. She had never once flinched, but she had also never once stopped a convoy. The motorcycles were already 2 intersections ahead. The tinted windows hummed. Her aide was talking. Something about seating arrangements. A minister who needed 5 minutes before the afternoon session. Her security lead was talking from the front seat. Everyone was doing exactly what they were supposed to do. Then she looked left. Side street. Loading bay. The Global Express truck had its rear doors wide open. The company logo was printed clean and professional on the side. Courier red, white lettering. Completely ordinary. The kind of truck you passed 100 times without seeing. 3 men in delivery uniforms stood in the bay, and in the middle of them, on her knees on the gray concrete, was a Korean woman. One man had her by the hair. His fist was locked in it. Her neck was bent back at an angle that made Amara's jaw tighten. The second man's boot was already moving. It connected with her ribs. The woman's body folded. The third man stood with his arms crossed, watching, like it was nothing. Like it was a task he had assigned and was checking off. The convoy kept moving. Of course it did. Protocol was clear. You did not stop. You did not engage. You maintained formation and you kept moving, because a diplomat who stopped for everything stopped for nothing. And that was a lesson Amara had learned in her first posting and never forgotten. She put her hand on the door handle. Ambassador. Her aide's voice. Sharp, urgent. Stop the convoy. Ma'am, we cannot. Stop the convoy. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. There was something in it that had been built over 15 years of rooms where being wrong cost more than any argument. Something final. Something that ended conversations without raising to a shout. The convoy stopped. Her security team hit the pavement before the engines settled. By the time Amara reached the loading bay, the 3 men were gone. The truck was still there. The woman was still there. On her side now, one arm pressed against her ribs, breathing in that careful way, the way you breathe when every breath is a decision. Amara knelt on that concrete in her full diplomatic attire. She didn't look at her jacket. She looked at the woman. The woman's eyes opened, dark, precise. The eyes of someone who had not given themselves up yet. Her hand came out, shaking but deliberate, and her fingers locked around Amara's wrist with a grip that was too strong for someone lying on a loading bay floor. One word, in Korean, before her eyes closed. Appa. Brother. Amara didn't know what that word meant yet. She would. She got the woman to a hospital. She filed a full incident report. Detailed, precise, nothing softened. Her aide's footage was already on the diplomatic server. The truck, the woman's face, the men's frames, the timestamp, the exact coordinates of the loading bay. She did everything right, but she wasn't finished. Ambassador Darko came to her hotel room that evening. He didn't knock loudly. He arrived quietly, the way men do when they're certain they already have the upper hand. He was calm. Completely calm. He told her that what she had witnessed was a domestic matter. That the woman had been identified and was receiving care. That the footage would be classified. That her report would be amended. Amara looked at him for a long moment. And if I don't amend it? Darko's face didn't move. Then your career ends here. He left. Here is what Darko did not know about Amara Osei. She had not spent 15 years in diplomatic rooms learning how to comply. She had spent 15 years learning exactly how far she could push before the wall came down. She picked up her phone. 3 Korean human rights journalists, 2 international organizations, the Korean Embassy press office. She sent the footage to all of them, at once. Then she sat on the edge of her bed, put her phone face down on the nightstand, and waited for the world to catch fire. It didn't take long. Seoul. The following morning, Kang Ji-hoon was in a meeting he didn't care about. The room was expensive, dark wood table, city view through floor-to-ceiling glass, the kind of silence that money buys in buildings like this one. Someone was talking about port access. Someone else was calculating bribes. Ji-hoon was listening with the part of his brain he kept running in the background, the part that never fully switched off. The rest of him was somewhere else, the way it always was. His phone lit up. An intelligence contact. A single link. A Korean human rights organization was posting unverified footage. A woman beaten near the summit venue. Identity unknown, asking for help. Ji-hoon watched it once. Once was enough. The man yanked her head back. Her neck turned. The camera caught it, the crescent moon birthmark below her ear. Small, dark, precise. The Kang family mark. 3 generations. Identical to the one on his own neck. He had been still for 4 years. 4 years of searching that became 4 years of believing. Because every report said the same thing. Every source he trusted. People he had paid with his life, people who knew what it cost to lie to him, had confirmed it. His sister was dead. She had been dead since the year she disappeared. He had built an empire on that grief. Not from ambition. From the need to stay in motion. Because stopping meant feeling it, and feeling it meant accepting a closed door he was not ready to accept. He was on a private jet in under 12 hours. He didn't request clearance. He didn't call ahead. He arrived. Director Mensah's government security team was waiting. At the gate. 8 officers, full tactical gear. Every camera in that terminal operational. The journalists who received an anonymous tip about this gate at this exact time were already in position. 4 officers crossed the terminal floor. They took Ji-hoon by his arms and his collar. They dragged the chairman of the White Tiger Syndicate across the polished floor. His shoes squealing against the tile, the overhead lights catching his face. And they threw him through the departure doors onto the pavement outside. The footage was everywhere within the hour. A Korean crime lord. An African airport. An international incident detonating live. Amara watched it from her apartment. She was already suspended pending review. Her server access was frozen. She was confined to her residence while Darko built his case against her. But the most dangerous Korean criminal on 3 continents had just caused an international scene at her country's airport because of footage she had leaked. She called her journalist contact. "I have more," she said. "Get ready." 3 days later, Ji-hoon was back in the capital. He had entered through channels that didn't appear on any government record. This was not impressive to him. It was simply how he moved. 2 days after that, he was in Amara's apartment. She came out of her kitchen with a cup of coffee and found him sitting at her table. The overhead light above the sink cast a thin line across the floor between them. Her coffee steamed. The apartment was quiet. He was still. Jacket on, hands folded, watching her with the kind of attention that meant he had already read the room twice and decided what it meant. She didn't scream. She set her coffee down on the counter. "You broke into my home. Your security was inadequate. You should leave. You have footage I need. Then you should have knocked. He almost smiled. Almost. The corner of his mouth shifted. Barely. Like a man who had forgotten what smiling felt. And was remembering it by accident. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Two people who were completely unbothered by the other's power, the kind of unbothered that is itself a form of power. Neither spoke for a long moment. Then Amara asked the one question that changed everything. Who is she to you? He looked at her directly. My sister. 2 syllables, but inside them, 4 years of grief, 4 years of guilt, 4 years of an empire built to keep himself from standing still long enough to feel the weight of a closed door. All of it compressed into 2 syllables. Amara heard every single word of it. She slid her phone across the table, the full, unedited footage. Everything her aide had captured from the moment the convoy stopped to the moment the ambulance doors closed. I want her safe, Amara said. Whatever you do after that is your business. He took the phone. He stood. He walked to the door. He stopped without turning around. Why did you stop the convoy? Amara picked up her coffee. Because nobody else did. He left. She stared at the door for a long time after. The coffee went cold in her hands. Something in the room was different than it had been before he arrived. She didn't name it. Not yet. There was still too much to do. Ji-hoon traced Marco Rossi through the footage in under a week. Rossi was the kind of man who had been protected so long he stopped being careful. His name was on 17 warehouse leases across 4 countries. He had employees. He had contracts. He had a courier logo on the side of his trucks, and powerful friends who had spent years making sure no one looked too hard at what those trucks actually carried. Ji-hoon looked hard. He found Rossi. He dealt with Rossi. But Rossi gave him something before he disappeared. A name. A Korean name. A government official. Title, clearance, flag pin, parliament-signed budget. Someone who had specifically paid to have Soo-yeon taken, not caught in a wide sweep, targeted, selected. Someone in Korea had looked at Soo-yeon Kang and paid for her to vanish permanently. She wasn't a random victim. She had been chosen. In a single night, without warning, Global Express ceased to exist as an operation. 17 warehouses across 4 countries, emptied. By morning, the footage was in international press hands. Empty cells, broken chains, the infrastructure of years of human trafficking running inside a legitimate business. The freed captives were already in the care of international organizations. The evidence was already moving toward the courts. Ji-hoon went back to Amara. Not because he'd planned to, not because she was useful. She had no credentials, no active clearance, no institutional access. He went back because she was the only person in this entire situation with nothing to hide. I need someone who can move in diplomatic spaces, he said. I need someone who can find things governments want buried, she said. They looked at each other. We have the same problem, they said. Not quite together, but close enough that the slight difference felt deliberate. They began working together. It was not easy. Amara moved through information like she moved through rooms, reading everything, committing to nothing until she was certain. Ji-hoon moved faster, operated on instinct backed by 2 decades of consequence. They disagreed on almost everything. Every conversation had friction in it. Every plan was contested before it was approved. But underneath the friction, something was building. The kind of thing that builds when 2 people are genuinely matched, not by being alike, but by being precise enough to recognize real competence when it sits across from them. Neither of them named it. There was still too much work to do. They mapped Darko's connection to Global Express together. Ji-hoon had the photographs, meetings that had never officially happened, financial transfers through layers of shell companies, A photograph of Darko meeting Victor Sorel, a known Global Express intermediary, 6 months prior in this city. Amara had the diplomatic context to turn a photograph into a case. But Darko moved first. He filed criminal charges against Amara: unauthorized disclosure, breach of protocol, conspiracy with a known criminal organization. The charges moved through the system fast, faster than charges like that should move. And within 48 hours, her credentials weren't frozen anymore. They were suspended. She was being extradited to face a formal tribunal. 15 years of her career were being publicly dismantled, one press release at a time. Ji-hoon found out within the hour. He walked into the Adaran Foreign Ministry building himself. Broad daylight. Every camera running. He crossed the lobby, took the elevator to the 4th floor, and sat down across from Ambassador Darko in his own office without being invited. He placed a single photograph on the table. Darko and Sorel. 6 months ago. This city. Drop the charges, Ji-hoon said, or this is the least of what I release. The charges were dropped in 2 hours. But before the authorities arrived, the Adaran investigators who had been quietly building a case for 2 years and needed only this. Darko revealed what he had been carrying for 4 years. He had been feeding Ji-hoon false intelligence, deliberately, consistently. Reports confirming Soo-yeon's death, each one constructed carefully enough to be believed by people whose entire job was to question everything. He had been the source. He had made Ji-hoon stop looking, because the moment Ji-hoon found Soo-yeon alive, every agreement Darko had built around Global Express collapsed. She was the witness. She was the thread. Pull her, and everything unraveled. Soo-yeon had been alive the entire time, and Darko had known. Ji-hoon went very still. This wasn't the stillness of someone processing information. This was the stillness before motion. Amara had seen it in him before, across their planning sessions, their arguments, and she recognized it now with complete clarity. She stepped between Ji-hoon and Darko. Not for Darko's sake, for Ji-hoon's, because whatever he was about to do in the next 10 seconds would cost him something he had only just gotten back. He's not worth what it costs you, she said, quietly. Not for the room, for Ji-hoon specifically. He looked at her. Something shifted, small, behind his eyes. Something that had been locked very carefully moved, just slightly, in a direction he wasn't ready for. Darko was arrested. The investigators who walked him from his own office in handcuffs had been waiting exactly for this. The same cameras that recorded Ji-hoon walking in recorded Darko being walked out. Darko's testimony gave them the location, a private medical compound outside the city, clean permits, past inspections, no flag on any government. Iron registry. Soo-yeon had been moved through 4 locations over 4 years, always just ahead of any search that got close. The extraction plan came from Ji-hoon. The 12-minute security window, the gap in the external surveillance system that made entry possible, came from Amara. Contact she wasn't authorized to use anymore. Information she wasn't cleared to access. She accessed it anyway. Ji-hoon went in himself. He was always going in himself. His teams covered the perimeter, the exits, the variables. The interior was his. The guards inside had been told to protect the assets at any cost. They meant it. What Ji-hoon did in those corridors was fast and close and final. Fluorescent lights, concrete floors, the smell of disinfectant over something that had nothing to do with medicine. He didn't stop. He moved through it the way he had moved through 20 years of consequence. With absolute certainty about where he was going, he found her in the 3rd room on the lower level. 4 years. She was smaller than he remembered. The woman he knew had been sharp and warm and capable of filling a room without trying. What he found had been compressed. Not broken, her eyes when they opened were clear and focused, and unmistakably hers. But changed. The way things change under sustained, deliberate pressure. The way they get harder and quieter and survive. He didn't speak. There was nothing to say. Nothing that could hold 4 years of guilt, 4 years of grief, 4 years of an empire built to keep himself from standing still long enough to face a closed door. He lifted her from the floor, he held her against his chest, and he walked out. Amara was waiting at the perimeter. The morning light was gray and flat. Her breath showed in the cold air. She watched him cross the last 100 meters with his sister in his arms, and she did not look away. Soo-yeon's eyes were open over Ji-hoon's shoulder. They found Amara's face. Her hand came out and found Amara's wrist. The same grip as the loading bay. The same precision. "You're the one who stopped," Soo-yeon said. "I'm the one who stopped," Amara confirmed. Soo-yeon closed her eyes. Her grip didn't loosen. That night, Ji-hoon sat alone in the safe house. Soo-yeon was sleeping, the first real sleep, in a room with a locked door and his people outside it. His empire ran itself across 3 time zones. The accounts settled. The machinery turned, indifferent to whether he watched it. He had done what he set out to do. He should have felt something clean, something resolved. He felt something complicated instead. Here is what no one tells you about grief. It doesn't simply reverse when the reason for it is gone. It has been building the house you live in. And when the house no longer needs to be built, you are still standing inside it. With all the walls up. Amara found him. She didn't ask if he was all right. She could see he wasn't. She sat next to him on the bench along the safe house wall, not close, present. "She said your name," Amara said. "When I found her." That was the first word she said. He didn't respond for a long time. The building was quiet. Outside, his people did their rotations. "She always called for me," he said finally. Not to Amara exactly, to the room, to the version of his sister he had carried for 4 years. Even when we were children, whenever she was afraid. "She's not afraid anymore," Amara said. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time without calculating what she knew, or what she wanted, or what she was worth to the next move. Just looked. "Why are you still here?" he asked. "You found her. You could leave." "So could you," she said. "But there are still 3 villains." He almost smiled. This was the first fall. The small, quiet one. The kind that happens before you know what it is. General Silas Vance had been Amara's head of security for 6 years. He had been her mentor before that. The person she called when a situation stopped being manageable. She had trusted him with her location in every dangerous country she had ever worked in. She had trusted him with her life. Literally. Multiple times. He had been protecting Global Express for a cut of the profits. He leaked her location at 2 in the morning. The attack on the safe house came at 3. Ji-hoon's people responded in 30 seconds. Because Ji-hoon had quietly positioned 3 of his men around Amara the moment they arrived. He hadn't told her. He had just done it. The way he did everything, with complete certainty about what the situation required, and 0 interest in announcing it. The fight was fast. Close. Brutal. Not like film. Like reality. Compressed space. Sound. The irreversibility of each second. Amara stood in the interior hallway and watched what Ji-hoon's people did, and then watched what Ji-hoon himself did when he reached the front of it. Controlled. Decisive. Total. No performance. No excess. Just a system running at full capacity. She had known what he was capable of. She'd understood it the way you understand something written on a page. This was different. This was watching it. Then Silas Vance was brought in, caught 3 blocks away, trying to reach a car that was never going to arrive. He talked. Men in his position always do, when the numbers have shifted and they know it. He gave them the name above his own, General Otieno, Adara's Minister of Defense. And then the full picture revealed itself. Otieno hadn't simply protected Global Express. He had founded it, 30 years ago, as a private funding mechanism for a parallel military operation. An army within the army. Funded not by parliament, by people. By 15 years of trafficking across international borders. And over those 15 years, he had built leverage, recordings of 31 Korean government officials who had accepted Global Express money, insurance running in 2 directions. Over 2 countries simultaneously. Now he was activating it. He had ordered Amara's assassination. Framed to look like Ji-hoon's work. A Korean crime lord eliminating the diplomat who exposed him. The frame job had one purpose: destroy the alliance, trigger a diplomatic crisis, and give Otieno the emergency military powers he'd been building toward for 30 years. Ji-hoon looked at Silas Vance for a long moment. He dealt with him. In front of Amara. He didn't move her to another room. He didn't tell her to look away. He dealt with the man who had sold her location to people who came at 3 a.m. to kill her. With the same complete controlled certainty he brought to everything. The silence after was total. Amara looked at Ji-hoon. Not past him. Not at a point beside him. At him. At the absolute absence of hesitation, at the distance between the man who had almost smiled at her kitchen table and the man standing in front of her now. "I need some air," she said. She walked out. He didn't stop her. They didn't speak for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Soo-yeon found Amara sitting alone. She didn't ask permission. She had spent 4 years in rooms where asking permission was a luxury taken from you. She sat down next to Amara and said what needed to be said. "He looked for me for 15 years, she said. He never stopped. He never built a home. He never built a relationship. He never built a life. Because he was always looking." She paused. "The empire isn't who he is. It's what he built to keep himself moving while he looked." Amara was quiet. "I'm not asking you to accept what he does," Soo-yeon said. "I'm asking you to understand why." General Otieno released everything, not the Korean recordings. He was saving those. He released everything about Amara Osei. Every decision she had made over 15 years that could be reframed as misconduct. Every protocol she had broken. Every leak she had made. The convoy stop. The footage. Her working relationship with Ji-hoon. All of it repackaged with the precision of a man who had been managing information for 30 years. It hit every major platform simultaneously. Her name was destroyed overnight. Every diplomat she had worked with issued a statement. Careful. Legally precise. Designed for maximum distance and minimum personal exposure. She received formal notification that her position had been permanently terminated. Not suspended. Terminated. Effective immediately. 15 years. Gone. She was sitting in the safe house with her phone face up in her hands when Ji-hoon found her. She was not crying. She was completely still. Past the impact now. Sitting inside the weight of it. The woman who had stopped a convoy, leaked footage, negotiated in rooms full of men who wanted things from her. Completely, utterly, still. Ji-hoon sat next to her. He didn't speak. Didn't offer solutions, though he had several. Leverage he could activate. Pressure he could apply in directions that would make powerful people very uncomfortable very fast. He offered none of it. He just stayed. They sat in the quiet for a long time. The building breathed around them. Outside the window, the capital moved through its evening, indifferent and continuous. "You should go," she said finally. "Steady. That specific kind of steady that costs something. I'm not useful to you anymore." He looked straight ahead. "I didn't come here because you're useful." She looked at him. He looked back. Neither of them moved. "I have spent my life destroying things," he said. Slow. Like a man translating from a language he'd stopped speaking years ago. "I'm very good at it." A pause. "You are the first thing I have ever wanted to build a wall around." She didn't respond for a long time. Then she reached out and put her hand over his. He looked down at their hands. He didn't move. This was the most unguarded she had ever seen him, this stillness while he decided what to do with her hand resting on his. He decided to let it stay. "There's still one villain," she said. "Yes," he said. "Then we finish it." This was the second fall. The real one. The kind you don't come back from. Not because it destroys you, but because it builds something in you that wasn't there before. And afterward you are permanently different. And you don't regret it. They worked together one final time. Amara had no credentials, no clearance, no institution. What she had was 15 years of relationships with people who still believed she was worth trusting. Not many, but enough. She spent 2 weeks rebuilding access through back channels, through the people who knew the difference between the things she had done recklessly and the things she had done because they were right. She found the recordings facility through intelligence she built piece by piece, financial trails, pattern recognition. 15 years of knowing how powerful men hid the infrastructure of their power. Ji-hoon secured it physically, but they didn't destroy the recordings. This was Amara's call, and she made it firmly. Destroying the recordings removed Otieno's leverage, but it also protected 31 corrupt officials and buried 30 years of evidence about how the operation was funded. Destruction served everyone's interests, except the people who had been trafficked for 3 decades, while those interests were quietly protected. She identified one Korean government official, someone whose 20-year record she could verify completely, someone who had spent their career fighting exactly this kind of corruption. She gave that person enough of the recordings to end Otieno's leverage, without releasing everything. Surgical. Targeted. The weapon disarmed. Not destroyed. Redirected. Otieno activated the assassination the moment he knew the facility had been breached. His own people this time. His own parallel military. The private army funded for 30 years by the operation he had built. Framed as Ji-hoon's work. Public. Documented. Designed to trigger the crisis that handed him emergency powers before the recordings reached any court. The attempt happened in public. Ji-hoon's people were already there. He had anticipated it. He had planned for it. 20 years of operating between official systems had made him very precise about how men like Otieno thought when they were running out of moves. Ji-hoon reached the shooter first, and then he walked into General Otieno's private office. Alone. No team. The door closed behind him. The camera stayed on Amara in the corridor outside. She stood with her hands at her sides, looking at the closed door. The office was built for silence. Meetings that could not leave the room. She heard nothing. She stood in the particular stillness of someone who has made peace with something they cannot control. 2 minutes. The door opened. Ji-hoon walked out. He straightened his jacket. One precise motion, the same controlled gesture he had brought to everything since the night he sat at her kitchen table. He looked at her. "It's done. All of it?" "All of it." Adaran authorities arrived within the hour. The clean Korean official had already moved. The recordings were already in the hands of international courts. Otieno's emergency military powers were dissolved before he could invoke them. The private army lost its funding overnight. 31 officials who had been taking money from a trafficking network for 15 years began receiving visits from people they did not want to see. Otieno was arrested in his own building, by people who were technically his subordinates, who had spent the previous 48 hours being briefed on what their superior had built over 30 years, and who had made, one by one, the same decision Amara Osei had made in a convoy that wasn't supposed to stop. The war that almost started never arrived. 3 weeks later. Seoul. It was raining. The spring kind. Steady and gray, the city moving underneath it like it had agreed to the terms long ago. Amara had no title, no post, no institution. What she had was 15 years of knowledge, the contacts who had survived the collapse, and the particular freedom that comes from having nothing left to protect from yourself. Ji-hoon had asked her, quietly, almost like it cost him something, whether she had ever been to Seoul. She'd said no. He'd said she should come. That was all. No explanation. Just a door left open. She considered it for 3 days and bought a ticket. She was standing at the window of a high floor when he came to find her. The city spread in every direction. The Han River cutting through it. The old mountains behind, the towers in front. His city. The city his empire ran through and underneath and around. His in the way things belong to people who have shaped them over years. "What do you do now?" he asked. "I don't know," she said. She was still looking at the city. Her reflection overlaid on it in the glass. Her face over Seoul, like the two of them were having a conversation she hadn't finished yet. "I've never not known before." He was quiet for a moment. "Stay," he said. She turned to look at him. "In Seoul?" "Here." One word. But she was a diplomat. She had spent 15 years listening for the content underneath words that appeared to hold less than they actually did. She understood exactly what was in that one word. The empire. The danger. The man who would never be anything other than what he was. The life that would look nothing like what she had planned. "I stopped a convoy for a stranger in an alley," she said. "Apparently, I have very poor judgment about which problems to make my own." He crossed the room. He stopped in front of her. Close. Closer than he had ever allowed himself to stand. This man who had kept controlled distance between himself and everything he cared about, because distance was protection and he had built his life around protecting what mattered from the possibility of losing it. His hand came up slowly, deliberately. The way everything he did was deliberate. His palm rested against her jaw. Warm. Certain. She looked up at him. She didn't look away. "Ji-hoon," she said, quietly. Just his name. The thing you say when you want someone to know you see them. Specifically them. "Amara," he said back. Like her name was something he had been holding carefully for a long time. He kissed her. Not urgently. Not desperately. With the same absolute certainty he brought to every decision he had ever made. Like this was a door he had already chosen to walk through. And he was completely at peace with what was on the other side. She kissed him back. Outside the window, Seoul glittered in every direction beneath the rain. And somewhere in that city, in the quiet apartment Ji-hoon had arranged before Amara's flight landed, at a small table by a window, of her own, Soo-yeon Kang was having dinner. There was food in front of her. The street below was full of ordinary people doing ordinary things. The door had no lock on the outside. She looked out at the street. For the first time in 4 years, she was not afraid. If you enjoyed this story and would like to watch more of narratives like this, please consider subscribing and click the notification icon. Type, "I enjoyed this masterpiece" in the comments so I can know you watched this video to the end. I love you and stay tuned for more stories.